The time is November 24th, 1971. The cold night air howls as a figure stands at the open door of a Boeing 727, 10,000 feet above the Pacific Northwest. Below him, a dark and endless wilderness stretches for miles. The wind rips at his suit, but he doesn't hesitate. Gripping a 21-pound bag filled with $200,000 in $20 bills, equivalent to nearly $1.4 million today, he takes a final glance back into the plane. Then, without hesitation, he leaps into the stormy night. The crew, confined to the cockpit, feels the cabin pressure shift but sees nothing. The man known only as Dan Cooper vanishes into the darkness, leaving behind a trail of questions that will haunt investigators for decades. 50 years later, the mystery of D.B. Cooper remains one of the greatest unsolved crimes in American history. Who was he? Where did he go? And did he really get away with it? This is the story of the man who disappeared into legend. Thanksgiving Eve, 1971. A man walks into Portland International Airport dressed in a black suit, white shirt, and a thin, black tie. He carries a briefcase and purchases a one-way ticket to Seattle under the name Dan Cooper. Nothing about him stands out. He looks like a businessman, quiet and unassuming. He boards Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305, a short 30-minute flight to Seattle, and takes his seat in the back. But as the plane ascends into the sky, Cooper calmly hands a note to a flight attendant. She thinks it's just another phone number from a passenger trying to flirt, until he whispers the words that will change everything. "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." Startled, Schaffner reads the note, which demands $200,000 in $20 bills, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck ready in Seattle. Cooper opens his briefcase just enough to reveal a glimpse of wires and red sticks, convincing her of the threat. The pilot informs air traffic control, and the FBI is alerted. Passengers remain unaware as Flight 305 circles Puget Sound for nearly 2 hours, allowing authorities time to gather the ransom and parachutes. Cooper remains calm, ordering a bourbon and soda and smoking 8 Raleigh filter-tipped cigarettes during the flight. Upon landing in Seattle, Cooper's demands are met. 10,000 unmarked $20 bills, totaling $200,000, weighing approximately 21 pounds, and 4 parachutes are delivered. He releases the 36 passengers but keeps several crew members on board. His next destination, Mexico City. "We're going to Mexico City," he instructs the crew. "Keep it low and slow." Flight 305 takes off again, heading south. Cooper's plan is in motion, somewhere between Seattle and Reno at approximately 8 p.m. Cooper instructs the remaining crew to stay in the cockpit. He lowers the rear stairway mid-flight, a feature unique to the Boeing 727. Against the freezing wind and pelting rain, Cooper steps to the edge, the 21-pound bag of cash strapped to him, and jumps into the inky blackness. The crew, confined to the cockpit, notices a sudden change in cabin pressure, indicating the aft door is open. They land safely in Reno, Nevada, but Cooper is gone. A massive manhunt ensues. The FBI scours the suspected drop zone, a rugged expanse of forested terrain in Washington and Oregon. Despite deploying helicopters, ground troops, and door-to-door searches, no trace of Cooper or his equipment is found. The only evidence left behind, his black clip-on tie, a mother-of-pearl tie clip, and 2 of the 4 parachutes. D.B. Cooper's plan wasn't just daring, it was brilliantly executed, leveraging meticulous preparation and an understanding of aviation, psychology, and law enforcement tactics. First, he chose the perfect day, the day before Thanksgiving. One of the busiest travel days of the year meant airports and airlines were overwhelmed, making it easier for him to blend in and harder for authorities to respond effectively. Law enforcement was spread thin, dealing with heavy holiday traffic, crowded terminals, and thousands of flights. Second, Cooper demanded 4 parachutes. This was a stroke of genius. If he had only asked for 1, the authorities might have suspected he was jumping alone and could have sabotaged it. But 4 parachutes created a terrifying possibility. He might force a hostage to jump with him. The FBI couldn't risk tampering with the gear, ensuring he got fully functional parachutes. Third, his aviation knowledge was impeccable. Cooper instructed the pilots to fly at 10,000 feet, low enough to keep the cabin unpressurized, making it possible to open the rear stairs mid-flight. He also knew the Boeing 727 had a unique feature, a ventral air stair which could be lowered mid-flight, something few civilians were aware of at the time. Additionally, he ordered the plane to fly at a reduced speed of around 200 miles per hour, mimicking safe parachuting conditions. Finally, he jumped into one of the most difficult terrains imaginable. The Pacific Northwest, with its dense forests, rugged mountains, and unpredictable weather, provided the perfect cover. No one knew exactly where he landed, making it nearly impossible for law enforcement to track him down. To this day, no confirmed trace of his landing has ever been found. By leveraging these elements, Cooper ensured that law enforcement had no clear way to predict or prevent his escape. His plan was not just about stealing the money, it was about outsmarting the entire system. And he did. The FBI had handled hijackings before, but nothing like this. When Flight 305 landed safely in Seattle on the rainy November night in 1971, agents rushed aboard, expecting a dangerous confrontation. Instead, they found nothing. The mysterious man in the dark suit, who had coolly demanded $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, and a refueled jet, had simply vanished. Somewhere over the forests of the Pacific Northwest, he had leaped into the night with his ransom money, disappearing into legend. The search for D.B. Cooper began immediately. By the next morning, FBI agents and local law enforcement were combing the rugged terrain below the plane's estimated flight path. The vast wilderness of southwest Washington, with its towering evergreens, steep ridges, and cold, rushing rivers, was an unforgiving place for anyone to survive a parachute jump. Inside FBI headquarters, the case was given a name: Norjack, Northwest Hijacking. Agents worked around the clock, piecing together what little evidence Cooper had left behind. The biggest clue was the clip-on tie he had removed and left on his seat. Lab technicians pored over it, searching for fibers, fingerprints, anything. Years later, scientists would detect microscopic traces of titanium and aluminum, metals often found in aerospace manufacturing, leading to speculation that Cooper may have worked in that industry. But at the time, in 1971, there was no definitive lead. One of the FBI's most promising strategies was tracking the ransom money. Before handing over the $200,000, agents had carefully recorded the serial numbers of all 10,000 $20 bills, hoping they would resurface. The Bureau alerted banks, casinos, and retailers across the country, warning them to watch for the marked bills. But the money seemed to disappear along with Cooper. For nearly a decade, not a single ransom bill showed up, until 1980, when an 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram made a startling discovery. While digging in the sand at Tina Bar, a riverside stretch near Vancouver, Washington, he unearthed 3 decaying bundles of $20 bills, still bound with rubber bands. The bills were quickly identified as part of the ransom. But how had they gotten there? Had Cooper hidden them? Had they washed downriver? Had he lost them in the jump? The discovery deepened the mystery, but brought investigators no closer to their suspect. The FBI's investigation faced several other significant challenges as well. Crucial evidence, such as the 8 cigarette butts Cooper smoked during the flight, is lost, eliminating crucial DNA leads. Additionally, reports of ground flares spotted in the vicinity of Cooper's suspected landing zone are dismissed as unrelated, possibly overlooking evidence of accomplices awaiting his arrival. Over the years, the FBI followed thousands of leads, chasing whispers and shadows. They interrogated ex-paratroopers, former airline employees, career criminals, and Vietnam War veterans. Anyone who might have had the skill and nerve to pull off such a heist. Some suspects stood out more than others. Richard McCoy, a skydiving enthusiast who hijacked a plane in a similar manner just months after Cooper, was briefly considered. but he didn't match the description. Dwayne Weber, a dying man, allegedly confessed to his wife that he was Cooper, but the evidence didn't hold up. Robert Rackstraw, a former military pilot with a suspicious past, seemed to fit the profile, but despite tantalizing clues, the FBI couldn't pin him to the crime. After 45 years of fruitless investigation, the FBI officially closes the case in 2016, leaving the mystery of D.B. Cooper unresolved. To this day, no one knows who D.B. Cooper really was, and several theories have emerged. One of the most compelling aspects of the CIA theory is the connection to Air America, a covert airline run by the CIA during the Vietnam War. Air America pilots and operatives were trained for high-risk extractions, airdrops, and unconventional operations behind enemy lines. The skills Cooper displayed that night, his knowledge of aircraft mechanics, his ability to control a hijacking with eerie professionalism, and his tactical approach to the parachute jump were all things that Air America personnel were taught. Furthermore, Air America was known for its use of Boeing 727s, the very same aircraft Cooper chose for his daring escape. Could it be that Cooper was an ex-operative or a disgruntled agent who used his insider knowledge to pull off the perfect heist? Or was he executing a mission that the public was never meant to understand? One of the strangest elements of the Cooper case was his choice of parachutes. He was given 4, but he specifically selected a military-style parachute, one that required expertise to operate. This suggests he had formal training in skydiving, possibly from the military or intelligence services. The conditions that night, high winds, cold temperatures, and limited visibility, would have made the jump nearly suicidal for an amateur. Yet Cooper made the decision with absolute confidence. Some theories suggest Cooper may have been part of Operation Cold Feet, a CIA mission where agents parachuted into remote, hostile environments to gather intelligence. If Cooper had been involved in such missions before, his ability to navigate a nighttime jump over the dense forests of Washington state would make more sense. The amount Cooper demanded, $200,000, has long puzzled investigators. It was an oddly specific sum. Some believe this figure correlates with CIA black ops budgets or could have been tied to a classified fund. If Cooper was an operative gone rogue, was this his severance pay? Or was it part of a larger scheme, a diversion to cover up another operation? Curiously, most of the ransom money was never found. While a small portion was discovered along the Columbia River in 1980, the rest vanished, just like Cooper himself. If he had CIA ties, could the agency have recovered the money before it was traced? Despite an extensive manhunt, the FBI never caught Cooper, and in 2016, they officially closed the case. Some theorists believe this decision was not due to a lack of leads, but rather an indication that Cooper's identity was known to certain government agencies. If Cooper was a former CIA asset, would the FBI really want to expose one of their own? Adding to the mystery, some ex-CIA personnel have hinted that Cooper's case was handled differently behind closed doors, suggesting there may have been classified elements to his story that the public was never meant to know. Was Cooper a rogue agent settling a score? Was he testing security weaknesses in a Cold War-era hijacking drill? Or was his escape part of a much larger scheme? The more one examines his behavior, the more it appears that this was not just the act of a desperate man seeking riches. This was an operation. And if Cooper did have CIA ties, one thing becomes clear: he didn't vanish by accident. He disappeared because he was meant to. The truth may never be known, but one thing is certain: Cooper became a legend.